Good morning, my name is Ariadna. I'm a student from Tech Milenio and this is my final evidence. In here, I'm gonna talk about how the world has changed. First of all, I'm gonna mention some important events of the last decade. For example, the fall of the Berlin Wall. On November 9, 1989, as Cold War began, the spokesman for East Berlin's Communist Party announced a change in the relations with the West and he said citizens will be free to cross the borders. At midnight, Berliners flocked to the wall and said, "Open the gate," and then they flooded through the checkpoints. Terrorist attack of the Twin Towers. On that morning, some terrorists of the group Al Qaeda stole three planes. Two of them crashed in the World Trade Center, and the third one crashed into the Pentagon on Washington. First African American president in the U.S. Barack Hussein Obama II became the 44th president in 2008, but he was the first African American to be elected. His presidency lasted 57 years, but before winning the presidency, he was a senator that represented Illinois. In 2009, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Scientists successfully cloned human stem cells. On 2013, scientists made their first embryonic stem cell line for human skin cells, using the same technique that cloned Molly the sheep. Okay, now let's talk about globalization. Globalization is when countries that were inherited close to trade and foreign investment open their economies and go global. The result is an increasing interconnectedness and integration of the economies of the world. So, why did globalization emerge? It arises both due to the problems of invasion of foreign products, lower costs, and lower quality, which would cause the closure of companies, unemployment, and economic social distress. On the other hand, some others see this as progress, which, in addition to allowing rapid access to goods, has newer and better methods of production and consumption, thus increasing general welfare. Terrorism. Terrorism is an awful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. So, in most cases, what caused the terrorist attacks of the 20th century? Most research indicates that terrorism in general has taken place many times throughout history. Lately, it has become popular and gained a great impetus with the propagation of ideologies and nationalisms. Speaking about the 20th century, this was a continuous period in which the use of armed violence was always present, and most of them were understood in a space between the end of the Second World War and the end of the century. This period was mostly done by groups whose banner was nationalism and separatism, focusing on the struggle of religious fanaticism and regardless of its real purpose and its real justification, it tried to find reason and justification on which to disguise and even seek contradictory causes such as pacifist and defense of the human rights. A unipolar world. A unipolar world refers to two or more countries that come together to make some change, to support themselves, fight against a problem, fight a battle of other things. They can be countries of the same continent or different countries. They can be based on different aspects such as economics, sociopolitical, among others. So, how does the end of the Cold War relate with the unipolar world? Unipolarity is used to describe the power structure when one superpower dominates alone. The end of the Cold War meant that the previous decade's superpower rivalry now had ended. There was no longer the traditional East versus West conflict, at least not the way it had been earlier in the 20th century. The United States surfaced as the sole dominating power in world politics as there were no real challengers at their economic position. This allowed real room for the superpower to maneuver and to get involved in the international issues that not necessarily conceded with national interest. We can describe this as a new political situation as being unipolar. Digital era, also known as the Information Age, is the name given to the period in the history of humanity that it is linked to the information and communication technologies. So, how has the digital era influenced today's society? New technologies are streamlining optimizing most of the activities we carry out in our day to day life. Communication is something that has advanced a lot. It is even faster than before. A current example in terms of internet is the transmission of messages, images, videos, and all kinds of documents from different parts of the world at any time, unlike the postal service of before. This era has improved our quality of life, but the most important thing is that together with this technological development, the mentality of thousands of people has been changed. Even with a new vision of the world, in addition to obtaining ideas, knowledge, and sharing them with others. The technological development and the digital age, after all, is a fundamental engine of progress in our society, and it is will always depend on the use of manipulation that we provide. This is why the same society is called to have a more active and committed participation with its development and generalized impact. Finally, to fit this all in one, we should start with globalization. This is a phenomenon we are currently highlighted on. It started when World War II finished, and it was due to the conflict that every country connected their economy to fulfill the needs of the world. They could not stop, so they kept on developing. It was created what we know as a trade, with everything connected in some way, such as politics or economy. With the merge of new institutions such as the United Nations or the Monetary Fund, we can see what globalization and the global trade are all about. But we must not forget that this would not have happened if not for the help of technological advances of the 20th century, as for example the evolution of the different types of communication existing, starting with the transportation of goods and people, and doing better things. For example, we started to transfer information at a very fast rate. Nowadays, we can communicate with other people even at the other end of the world, thanks to globalization and digital age as whole. Well, they say that not everything in life is good. Of the benefits we obtained, there were quite bad things about sharing information and ideas with other people. Terrorism. Terrorism was about attacking somebody that did not think the same as you did, and that would end in a conflict to beat, because of the great impact and the number of people affected. Today, sharing this type of idea takes us more than anything to different types of violence without meaning. At the end of the Cold War, the transition to today's unipolar power structure has brought major changes to world politics, with USA emerging as the cold superpower. The total number of armed conflicts has decreased, but the threats increased. Nowadays, the new technologies tend to have even more risk than other periods, but we have learned to manage them mostly in a responsible manner for the welfare of society and the world.